is according to Dr. Macau from a local hospital, where 6 people were admitted with gunshot wounds and 3 others with various injuries. Sadly, one of the critically injured succumbed while undergoing treatment. Another patient remains in critical condition, while the rest are said to be in stable condition. In Nairobi, running battles were witnessed between protesters and police officers, with the latter using tear gas and rubber bullets in efforts to disperse crowds. Similar scenes of unrest were reported in several other towns and counties across the country. Human rights groups have condemned the use of excessive force by security agencies and have called for independent investigations into the incident. The protests, although largely peaceful in many areas, were marred by pockets of violence and aggressive crowd control tactics by law enforcement. Well, the country witnessed a fresh wave of nationwide protests as thousands of demonstrators, many of them Gen Z, took to the streets to mark the first anniversary since last year's June 2024 anti-finance bill demonstration. The protests, which erupted across multiple towns and cities, were aimed at demanding for justice for victims of police brutality, calling for governance reforms and asserting the constitutional right to peacefully assemble. In major urban centers, youth-led demonstrators flooded the streets with chants, placards, and songs, voicing deep frustration with what they described as systemic failure by the government to respond to citizens' concern. Protesters called for an end to extrajudicial killings and more transparency in public governance, echoing the same issues that sparked the nationwide outrage a year ago. Business operations and public transportations were severely disrupted in several areas as protesters lit bonfires and barricaded roads, causing traffic gridlocks and tension among residents. In Nairobi, chaos unfolded near Parliament and State House roads as protesters clashed with heavily armed riot police. Tear gas canisters filled the air as security forces attempted to block marchers from accessing high security zones. In Githurai, along the busy Thika Road, demonstrators brought traffic to a standstill for hours. Armed with flags and signs, they chanted slogans calling for justice and accountability, demanding that the voices of the young be heard. Well, in Kikuyu town, to mark the anti-finance bill, protests took a deadly twist as they turned violent, resulting in torching of key public infrastructure. Enraged protesters reportedly set fire to the Kikuyu law courts and several sub-county offices, escalating what had initially been a peaceful commemoration into widespread chaos. Dramatic video footage shared widely on social media showed thick smoke billowing from the engulfed buildings alongside the court complex. Several machines, including tractors and tuk-tuks parked within the premises, were also reduced to ashes. The crowd further stormed other government offices, vandalizing property by smashing windows and destroying vital documents and office furniture. Police officers at the scene were seen struggling to contain the inferno, resorting to makeshift efforts like using buckets of water and sand. The attempts, however, were largely futile as the blaze consumed everything in its way. Now, a wave of concern has gripped Kenya's media and civil society sectors after the Communication Authority of Kenya ordered all television and radio stations to immediately suspend live broadcasts of the ongoing of the 25th anti-government protests. The directive came amid escalating tension across the country as the demonstrations marked 1 year since the controversial 2024 finance bill. In a formal notice dated 25th June and circulated to all media houses, CAK cited violations of the Constitution, referencing Article 33(2), Article 34(1), as well as Section 461 of the Kenyan Information and Communication Act 1998 as justification for the directive. The authority argued that continued live coverage of the protest posed risks to national security and public order. Despite the directive, several media houses defied the order and continued to broadcast the events live, prompting swift punitive action from the authority. Reports indicate that CAK, accompanied by police officers, raided key broadcast installations in Limuru that serve NTV. The teams allegedly shut down the free-to-air transmission equipment, effectively blocking out broadcasts from these stations in several parts of the country. Kenya Television Network, KTN, was also reportedly taken off air, as well as K24 TV. Now, the Law Society of Kenya has obtained observatory court orders suspending the directive by the Communications Authority of Kenya, which had sought to halt live broadcast in the June 25th government protest. The legal victory comes amid growing national and international concern over the suppression of press freedom during the Gen Z-led demonstration marking 1 year since the 2024 finance bill protest. In a strongly worded statement, the LSK demanded that the Communications Authority immediately restore all broadcast signals that were previously shut down. The authority's action had resulted in media blackouts on several major television stations, including NTV, KTN, and K24, followed their continued coverage of the ongoing protests despite the directive. LSK further warned that failure to comply with the court order would result in legal consequences for the leadership of the CA. The CA had earlier cited constitutional violations and national security concerns as the basis for its directive. Now, some of the opposition figures, including Wiper Party Kalonzo Musyoka and DAPK leader Eugene Wamalwa, had strongly condemned the Communications Authority of Kenya's directive to block live broadcast the demonstrations. Speaking to journalists during a press briefing, the leaders argued that the freedom of the media is constitutionally protected and cannot be arbitrarily contained. Musyoka cited Article 35 of the Kenyan Constitution, which guarantees every citizen the right to access information. He questioned whether the government is attempting to hide alleged human rights violations against protesters, emphasizing that transparency is vital in a democratic society. On his part, Eugene Wamalwa interpreted the CAK order as a sign of the government's intent to deploy security forces against demonstrators. He referred to recent event in Nairobi where authority clashed with alleged troublemakers, resulting in disruption of otherwise peaceful protests.
Also are very concerned about the disturbing reports of intimidation from the Ruto regime of the media. Free media is the cornerstone of our democracy. If you threaten the media, switch off media houses covering the live happenings of events across the country, what are you trying to conceal? What are you trying to hide from the Kenyans and from the rest of the world? We smell a very nefarious scheme that this system, under cover of darkness, want to do what they do best, to harm Kenyans, kill, butcher, arrest, abduct. That is the evil that happens under the cover of darkness. So we will be standing by the media and the Law Society of Kenya in challenging these very tyrannical action taken by the Communication Authority and Ruto's government.
And Article 35, and the Communications Authority is quoting Articles 33 and 34, and we must remind them that those articles are very clear that the freedom of the press is guaranteed. It cannot therefore be taken arbitrarily under whatever circumstances without a proper consultation on particularly the issue of content. So, as my brother said, we hope the courts are going to have to exercise their minds on this and issue some deterrent measures against William Ruto's administration. We have also received the notice that the Safaricom itself has even given some notice to Safaricom users that they may want to interfere with the internet connectivity. So again, we are very much aware, we remain alert, and fortunately they do not even know we have satellite links and people. So, but of course, the Safaricom does an important job, and this is why we have always suspected they are part of the state capture. If they can be prevailed upon to interfere with undersea cables and make it look like there's some outage under the sea, we will not accept this.
All right, let's see what the dailies are screaming. We'll start with the Daily Nation, which the headlines scream Black Wednesday, and it has says three TV stations switched off, state repression rears head as CA illegally shuts down TV stations for defying a controversial directive to stop live coverage of protests. And then it has 9 killed, about 400 injured, and more than 60 arrested across the country in a day of chaos as police officers battled with thousands of protesters, looting and destruction. Business owners suffer losses as premises broken into and goods carted away. Government offices in some towns set on fire and vandalized. And then 27 counties across the country reported protests as Gen Zs united to remember the victims of the June 25th, 2024 demos against punitive taxes. Now, this is pretty interesting, the 27 counties, because one of the narrative that is being peddled is that this was a tribal demonstration with some of the what you can call bloggers that are being paid by the government or pro-government bloggers, pushing it to become tribal demonstration where one community, which I'm not going to mention, which Rigiji comes from, is accused of being behind the demonstrations. But pretty interesting. It's 27 counties that went out where people demonstrated, including parts of Kisumu. And then the second page and third page is a picture. It's blood, tears, and sweat as thousands of Kenyans mark Finance Bill 2024. And you can see, these guys everywhere. There's even a picture of a police officer, a lady who had been injured, been helped, and she had been beaten by the demonstrators, by the way. I saw a couple of those, which were very unfortunate, when we have police officers being mishandled by individuals. And then you have the picture of the former Chief Justice David Maraga shielded from tear gas on Kimathi Street. And then you have a man who I think by now his blood is used to tear gas. I'm talking about Senator Okiya Omtata. He was also in the streets yesterday. Then you have Black Wednesday as 9 killed, 400. And then you have very disturbing pictures of people who were bleeding. I don't know what had happened to them. Maybe they've been hit by something. And the looting that went on. In fact, as I said, today as I was coming to the office, just around OTC there's one building, I think it's, men and colors. It's either red or maroon. Some goons had invaded it today in the morning, and they had attempted, they looted a couple of things, and then the dudes just set the place on fire. It's ridiculous. It's truly ridiculous, because what you're doing is you're causing other people, you're causing other families to suffer. Sad. And then how police defied court orders during protests. CA ordered to restore signals of 3 TV stations after shutdown. You have the CA Director General David Mugonyi. Oh boy. The back page, you have big moment for Faith Kipyegon. Kenyan star will need to shave 7 seconds off her world record to write fresh history. But maybe it'll be one of those things like Kipchoge did, aided, by technology to do this. Then you have the Star newspaper, that's excuse me, that says mayhem and death. Trigger happy cops shoot Matu protester dead as government clamps down hard on media, switches off live broadcast. And then you have agri-tech startup seek. Then the 4th and 5th page of the Star, you have now in details what happened yesterday, continues to page 6 and 7. During demonstrations, there are funny things that happen. Yesterday at Kimathi Street, I saw some old guy who the young people had taken and nicknamed Moses. And he was told to part the Red Sea. And this guy is pretty interesting, funny. And he lifted up his staff and parted the Red Sea, marking the start of the demonstration. It's just pretty interesting. These guys, they're very creative. Oh my goodness. Tension over Gen Z demos forced MPs to adjourn early. You could see the MPs driving out of Parliament pretty fast. Then agony of the axe, reality downing on City star players after relegation from Premier League. We need to find a way of helping some of these teams to remain profitable. The Standard has a very interesting headline. It screams out, "Rogue Regime." Youthful protesters flooded the streets in defiance to remembrance of those gunned down in last year's rally. But instead of listening here, they were met with razor-sharp wire, armored trucks, and the cold grip of repression. Parliament, the People's House, was barricaded like a Nazi concentration camp, a grotesque symbol of government retreating from its citizens. Police unleashed brute force. Media houses went dark as broadcast signals were pulled in a desperate bid to silence the voices. But the youth were undeterred. Their voices pierced through the fog, tear gas, and tyranny, refusing to be drowned in the fear of blood. Whoa, man, that can end up being a movie, right? That's a powerful script right there. Then you have the second and third page. You have individuals basically in pictures, what was happening, including some of the guys that were injured, being assisted, being taken to find help. There's a guy, by the way, who comes here. His name is Victor Sankara. Victor Sankara is an analyst that we normally basically have conversations with during some of our shows, and his cousin is one of the people who was shot yesterday. I saw it on his Facebook. And Victor, pole sana. We ask the Lord to strengthen and give grace to your family, together with the other families that have suffered whatever happened yesterday. And then these pictures continue. Now, in the Standard, page 6, you have the guy, the Moses. Oh my word. An elderly man joined the Gen Z protesters along Moi Avenue. This guy must be in his 70s, man. As they remember 60 young people who died in last year's demonstration. This guy must be in his 70s. And then, this one is interesting. There's a picture there of a lady who's surrounded by Nyahunyo wielding cops. I think this is adrenaline. This lady has jumped almost 6 feet high to evade or to avoid the lashes from these individuals. Wow. And then you have Maraga keeping his promise to work with Gen Zs as he builds 2027 momentum. It's pretty interesting. Then the back page, we have an angry nation, pictures of an angry nation, which is just speaks volumes. You can see the anger there, rage. I don't know. I think the government needs to sit down and re-strategize, because this is a lot of pent-up anger. People can clothe it in all kind of names, politics and stuff, but this is a lot of pent-up anger. And just imagining that it's going to happen in 2026 and 2027. Well, if the president wants to come back, he really has to do something so that these guys, they don't go out in 2026 and 2027, because I will build a momentum like never before. Because you can imagine, Muredi Muito is with us, by the way. He's coming in so that we can talk about this. And maybe we go for a short break right now. When we come back, we'll talk about it.